Our next guest is an Emmy Award-winning and Oscar-nominated actor who is perhaps still best known for his 1995 film Babe, which tells the story of a farm pig who wants to do the work of a sheepdog. The role was fitting because James Cromwell has been an animal rights activist for decades. He trended on social media last week after supergluing himself to a Starbucks counter in New York City, demanding that the company stop charging customers extra for plant-based milk.
Will you stop charging more for vegan milk? When will you stop raking in huge profits while customers, animals, and the environment suffer? When will you stop penalizing people for their ethnicity and their morals? The senseless upcharge hurts animals.
Wow. James Cromwell has always been political. You probably know him most recently for his role in HBO's very political and very funny drama Succession, which I am obsessed with, in which Cromwell plays Ewan Roy, the elder estranged brother of the Rupert Murdoch-like character at the heart of that show, Brian Cox's Logan Roy. Here is Ewan telling cousin Greg what he really thinks of his billionaire media tycoon younger brother.
He's morally bankrupt. He's a nothing man who may well be more personally responsible for the death of this planet than any other single human being.
He also makes the Callispatron franchise, which is, solid, mediocre entertainment.
In terms of the lives that will be lost by his whoring for the climate change deniers, there's a very persuasive argument to be made that he's worse than Hitler.
That line makes me laugh every time. The brilliant James Cromwell joins me now. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's a pleasure to have you here. We're going to talk about Succession, but first, talk to me about the Starbucks protest last week. What made you want to take such direct action? And sorry, I also have to ask, did it hurt supergluing your hand to a counter?
No, it doesn't hurt at all. It's very simple. Just pour the glue on the counter, stick your hand in it, and it's done. Getting it off takes a little work with some acetone, but there's really nothing to it. It just means that the cops can't drag you out when they get there, so they don't actually know what to do with you, because you can't leave the premises. So they had to call their supervisor, and then that supervisor called another supervisor. It was a comedy of errors.
So talk to me about the actual protest itself, because Starbucks is saying, well, the pricing on our different milks and our products, they vary from market to market. This is about supply and demand. It's nothing to do with animal rights. What do you say to them?
Well, first of all, that's not true, because in Great Britain and in most of the places in France and around the world, they don't charge. Now, if they get nut milk cheaper, they pay 8 cents to use the amount of nut milk that they do or oat milk in their coffee as it is, and they charge 10 times more than that because so many people are changing to wanting non-dairy creamers that it's a very good way to make more money. Of course, it disadvantages people who are lactose intolerant, and it increases the suffering of the animals that produce dairy, which, if you know anything about the factory farm system is, in terms of dairy, it's grotesque. But I have to create a little context for this. We are on the cusp of the 6th mass distinction, which is going to occur once we go over 1.5 degrees, which we will do at some point in the next 5 years. The reason that it's so critical is because we have no way to model what happens after we reach 1.5. If it goes over 1.5, there are so many variables that it won't work. Now, most people, a quarter of the electorate, they don't believe in science anyway. It doesn't affect them. They pay no attention. Another quarter says, it's the fault of the Democrats. It's the fault of the Jews. It's a fault of everybody, people of color, whatever excuse they can come up with. Yeah. Another fourth of the people don't vote anyway because they're so disheartened by the whole process that they don't do it. That leaves the 1/4 of people who are disaffected, that they are cynical, and those are the people we tried to reach by gluing our hand and announcing that we were protesting these fees on non-dairy creamers, which impacted animals, the climate, and people.
So I have interviewed a lot of actors and celebs on this show who also engage in political activism, but none like you who've been arrested, I believe, multiple times for protesting on the environment, including at a Democratic Party fundraiser in 2017 attended by Nancy Pelosi and Andrew Cuomo. None like you who can trace their political activism back not just to 2016 and supporting Bernie Sanders as you did, but to the civil rights movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement, the Committee to Defend the Black Panthers. So I have to ask, what got you into activism, left-wing, social justice activism, so early on in life?
My father was blacklisted in Hollywood. He was a director, head of the Directors Guild, and he was blacklisted for no reason. He testified in front of the committee that he had left New York before the communists actually got started in New York. He belonged to a progressive Democratic, Hollywood Democrats. Once he left because he was so busy, they moved slightly more to the left, I think, very progressive. And they said, there's nothing wrong with John. He just has to come in and apologize to the committee, which my father would not do. So he was blacklisted. And I knew a little bit about it. That was, of course, in the 50s. I was, right around then, about 13. And so I just got a sense of the injustice that was done to my father by that town, by the people. And so when I got my father cut out a little squib from the New York Times about a theater that was going to tour the South, and it would be integrated. And I thought, what a great idea. I had no idea what the South was. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I got down to Mississippi and I walked to New Orleans, and I walked into the quarter, and on our building, there was a brass plaque which said coloreds only. And I thought, oh, that's a throwback to the Civil War, blah. And went upstairs, met a very nice black lady who showed us to our rooms, then went for dinner, and were promptly thrown out of the restaurant because the man I was having dinner with, the man who started the theater, John O'Neill, was black. So I learned, both in directing Waiting for Godot and being advised by the preacher of the church we were working in, the relationship between Pazzo and Lucky, between the master and the slave. And then we moved into Macomb. That was our first stop in Mississippi, and they had firebombed the church. And when we went to the Freedom House, I saw more black guys than I had ever seen. And some girl had been spit upon and kicked and trying to integrate the lunch counter. And I thought, what country am I in? From that experience.
That is the kind of experience that would certainly explain a lot of your politics, understandably. You are now in a show, Succession, that is a brilliant comedy and a drama, but also a pretty piercing look at the rather disturbing and corrupt worlds of American media, American politics. In your view, how much is this show a drama, and how much is just a documentary, just a very accurate portrayal of the Murdoch family, who the Roy family are clearly based on, and who, as I mentioned at the start of this show, are responsible for a lot of the political and racist mess we're in right now as a country?
I agree, and I don't know that it can't be satire because it's so accurate. Jesse, the writer, knows so much better than I do about how these people behave with each other. I've only had one instance. I did a play in Australia about Murdoch, and I went on the ABC to talk about it, and he had just orchestrated the firing of literally hundreds of ABC, Australian Broadcasting Corporation, employees because he was pissed off to the fact that ABC controlled Southeast Asia in terms of online platform, which he had given up without thinking too much about it. Now he wanted it back, so he's putting the screws on. So I know what he's capable of. This is sort of showing what the writers of the show and the actors think might be the relationship between that family, how dysfunctional it is. Listen, it's a dysfunctional system we're in. So how can they be anything else but dysfunctional and corrupt? So that's well put.
Well put. So your role, Ewan Roy, in Succession is fascinating. I love it. I know it's not one of the main roles, but that hasn't stopped you from really stealing some scenes on that show. Let's watch one of them. Have a watch.
You are not the arbiter of the truth.
Oh, yeah, I heard it all before.
I was told that you were ready to apologize.
For what?
You're all liars. You lied to me. And you humiliated me.
But other than that, you had a nice time?
Go yourself.
Whoa.
I don't understand why we don't invite him every year.
How did the role of Ewan Roy come about for you? And was he always going to be the only ethical, the only principal member of the Roy family, despite also admittedly being a curmudgeon as well?
No, he wasn't going to be. He was going to be as compromised as you would imagine him to be, although he was passed over by his younger brother and settled upon a great deal of money, which he bought a large ranch in Montana or wherever he was living. But I begged, and I didn't beg. I had a great discussion with Jesse, the writer, about if any man went to Vietnam and fought 2 tours in Vietnam, you can't have him come back and just slip into that kind of muck, that cesspool of that family and their entanglement with everything foul in this country. I thought he's got to have some spine. He's got to know the difference between right and wrong. He has to make a statement. He can't compromise. They are liars. They're cheats. And I could say something worse.
It's a great character. I'm glad you made those changes. One last question. You have played Farmer Arthur Hoggett in Babe, Ewan Roy in Succession, George H.W. Bush in Oliver Stone's W, Jack Bauer's dad in 24, Prince Philip in The Queen, George Sibley in 6 Feet Under. What role have you enjoyed playing most? What are you proudest of?
Well, I mean, I have to be proud of all my work, but I'm most interested in what comes next. I'm working on a production of King Lear to do as a series in 5 acts. So all of them you named, and there are others that are really LA Confidential and
yes.
So many wonderful films, not because I was in them, but because they actually are wonderful films, that I'm proud of the work that I do. I enjoy doing it. I do the best I can. People seem to recognize that what I do is work, that's my job. I do the best job I can. And they always say to me, I like your work. Instead of, fawning over the celebrity, they understand that what we do basically is, as Shakespeare say, hold the mirror up to nature to show virtue, her own features, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of the time, his form and pressure. In other words, we see ourselves in the images that we create, in the performances that we give, and they recognize themselves in it and are capable of looking at themselves in a new way. So that's what I do, and I've always tried to do.